Welcome, reanimated fans, to this week's episode. I'm H.A. Conrad, coming to you from a very soggy Brooklyn after some flash flooding, but everything's well here, or at least the floodwaters are receding. Here, joining me on the West Coast, where they could use a little bit more rain, and I guess got a little bit, is Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Hey, hi, how are you?
Good, good. I wish we could transfer some of this to you. This would have been helpful, maybe.
That transcoastal pipeline is something we need to get working on for sure.
I know. Anyway, so we are talking today about episode 3 of Daryl Dixon, Paris, Sera, Toujours, Paris. But before that, we have like a minute amount of news items because there's a dearth right now. But maybe things will be coming back now that it seems like the writer's strike at least is resolved.
Pause for celebration.
Right, SAG though. Not so much yet, so we'll see what happens. But did you want to chat about this? I mean, this is something we've been talking about, and I admit I thought that that All of Us Are Dead was well under production for their second season, but apparently not. This is disappointing news to me, but I'm hoping they're very quick in their production, maybe, but it's a pretty massive undertaking, so I'm guessing we probably won't see this until maybe late 2024, or if not 2025. I don't know.
This article is dated yesterday, and the lead is director behind All of Us Are Dead has begun teasing the series' upcoming second season. Apparently, the director spoke to what fans can look forward to in the second season. He's talking about what, features about the show, what kind of zombies, etc. It's going to be set in Seoul, which is interesting. And then in the second half of his quote is, "We are currently preparing for production, so please look forward to the show." This is horrifying to me as someone who was convinced this was coming out this year or early next year. This is like years away, especially if they do another 12 episode, 1 hour each, season. Good grief. I was like definitely convinced that they were right around the corner, but this is nowhere near. So that's kind of a bummer.
Yep. So we shall, but you know what, maybe I will say, with a lot of the Korean productions, they seem to be a lot more swift in post-production, so it may be that we see this sooner than we're thinking, which
maybe there was a ton of effects and CG in that series. Maybe not as much as I'm thinking, but yowza. Either way, I'm excited that it's still coming, but I kind of thought it was closer, so that's a bit of a bummer. You know what though, on the writer's strike ending, this means that oh man, my brain is just a sieve. But the writers of The Last of Us can now start breaking their episodes again. All they had done is sent like a treatment for the first episode. I remember we talked about that article where he was talking about how he'd been writing up until like 10 p.m. the night before the strike started, and that was the last he had worked on season 2. So now they can break season 2 further. Even without the SAG folks there to participate. They're not going to need actors for a while because they have to write, I think, at least like the first 3 or 4 episodes before they can start to produce it or start to shoot. Yeah. So that's good. Like that means progress for The Last of Us season 2, even though it will be delayed. I think everybody's on the same page that's coming. And then this isn't news, and I didn't read these reviews, but I did read the headlines. Gangnam Zombie and We Are Zombies have both been reviewed by Bloody Disgusting. Gangnam Zombie headline was a little lukewarm. We Are Zombies appears to be getting favorable reviews from what I've seen of headlines. And we had talked about, I think, both of these before, but Gangnam Zombie maybe not in like a year. But we'll have to check them out eventually. Do you remember either of those?
I do. But we'll have to check this out a little bit later, I guess. But we still have a lot to go with Daryl Dixon, or I'm still excited to be talking about this with you. So, I say we talk about our thoughts on episode 3, in which I am justified in some predictions I made.
H.A. Conrad and Daryl Dixon have a lot in common in this episode in that they say "I told you so" a lot. I'm just gonna
Yep,
go ahead and throw that out
we
there.
are. There we are. But I
I will
did.
say, after the heights of episode 2 and all that amazing stuff that we were gushing about with the Parisian metro, etc., those flashbacks, so great. This episode was not nearly as good, and that's a bummer.
No, no, and I will say I was excited that they got to Paris so quickly because I thought that they were going to draw this out, and I was worried about.
Considering, yeah, considering they stopped in another city on the way to Paris in this episode,
So
but that,
I will say
yeah,
that I am happy that they're moving. At least it seems like they're moving the plot along a little bit more quickly. And
I don't know. Like I said last time, I was kind of hoping for more of a road trip, a
mm,
little more of the road trip. I don't know how Paris is gonna shake out, because once you get into these dense cities, you generally have fewer outdoor sets. It's more of this, dead city stuff where you're now it's like on a dark set and you can't tell, actually there's no sense of location anymore. But when we were on the road, you had this beautiful sense of outdoor southern France, at least when they were in southern France. And I would have settled for northern France too, or middle France outdoors. And you do get a little bit of that on the way up there, but that sense of place is kind of one of the secret sauces of this show. At
okay,
least
well, but they film in what is supposedly Père Lachaise, but and they film in supposedly the catacombs. I don't think they actually filmed in either of those places, and we can talk about that. I It
yeah,
didn't look
dude.
like that to me.
Yeah,
I think that they may if they did film in the catacombs, that would have been a pretty insane um
that's a
get.
get.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure if they did, or maybe they were able to do just like one like passageway. But I mean, look, they did find a whole movie theater in the catacombs at some point that somebody had just kind of created down there. So it isn't, beyond the realm of possibility that um there's a
A
you know
nightclub down there.
clubbed in there because it is like massive. But
How many theater of vampires, like La Théâtre de
I
Vampire,
know.
were you having? I mean, especially
Yep,
since the second season of Interview with the Vampire is going to feature that place. I was like, oh, this feels like a preview.
yep.
Or maybe AMC was just reusing the same set that they're going to use for that, since they're both the same property. That'd be
Possibly,
interesting.
possibly. But yeah, and I mean, the minute they dove in with the Doors cover, I was like, oh, they're totally gonna do the Jim Morrison grave. There's
I didn't.
some reference to that, and
Yeah.
I don't think it is though. I think it's a dummied up thing. It looks like sort of like the grave, but like
Hmm.
it's not. It's actually like kind of packed in there. And if you've ever been to that cemetery, everything is packed in so closely. This might be. I don't know where this does not look like it to me, and I could be wrong. I did try to find it. Whether they'd actually film there. But they're pretty specific in that place about filming. So,
Hmm.
and there's lots of cemeteries around Paris, so I'm imagining this may have been a smaller one or one outside. But everything in there is so packed together because it's got such a history, and it's like, after a time, some of the mausoleums, if they haven't been used, they like basically kind of like take them out and then rebuild over them, or like, but everything is packed together, and especially where Jim Morrison is, that's particularly like that is like totally like crushed together. So,
Yeah, there's
but
stuff in
I like
front of
that they
it.
tried.
That shot that they have of them looking at it from like 10, 20 feet away, I don't think that's possible in this graveyard.
No,
There's
no.
like there's another large structure right in front of it, or right
Uh,
where his feet would be. But
right.
before we even get to that cover and the entry into Paris, they do arrive in Angers,
No,
which
this was kind
um
of a throwaway thing to me, but go ahead.
yeah, well, it's mostly there to show the cracks in Daryl and Isabel's relationship, because he was never pro going to Angers. She was like, no, we can go there. There's a contact there. There's a radio there. I don't know
Mm.
what she was really hoping to get out of it. I don't think that the audience could ever really get on board with her, because what was the point? And Daryl's saying the same thing, and so us and Daryl are all being like, what was the point of this? And in a way, it felt like filler, because they do just kind of ride into Angers. They go into this one building, they meet an insane guy, and that was kind of entertaining, but also like, wow, this is dangerous. What did you think of the symphony?
Again, I just thought this was kind of a throwaway, and this guy is like bananas. And I do like how Daryl's pretty swiftly like, okay, I didn't want to come here anyway. Let's go to Paris because that was the plan. And this seemed like it didn't work out. I kind of like, I gave in. I let you kind of do this, but we're not wasting any more time. We're going to Paris. And that's kind of where he is.
This just seems uncharitable of him, like almost a little uncharacteristic of him to be kind of cruel. Like this was a stupid waste of time. We're not
Well, I
doing
mean,
things like this anymore. It
well,
just felt
originally
like that's like old school Daryl. I don't feel like he's that cruel
I think
usually.
he's anxious. I think he just doesn't want to like waste time. I also think this is a subtle like American versus French European thing where he's just like, I want to get my goal and get done. And then, she like her reasoning for not wanting to go to Paris, we know that there's stuff behind that probably related to Quinn. Even before we get there, but he just doesn't understand and says this doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't we just go directly to Paris? This is like the long way around. And so he's anxious. And now, look, he had the disappointment that the Père Jean's radio didn't work. Now this time the radio, this guy is like bananas and there's nothing there. And then, okay, let's go to Paris where there is a thing where maybe there is some help there. So I think
Where
he's,
there's almost certainly a radio, except
yeah,
he's
I
actually
think,
0 for 3 in radios right now.
right. And I
And
think he's,
what's he going to do with a radio? There are not transatlantic radio towers right now. I don't know.
yeah,
Like, what is the point?
this is what I don't understand unless there's something we're not like keyed
Is
into
this
here.
just
Like
an extension of The Walking Dead's like lack of ability to understand the range of radio signals, like with the
maybe, but
walkie-talkies?
let's just say that tape recorder that keeps popping up is the new walkie-talkie of this in terms of my annoyance.
It's the new VHS tape from Fear the Walking Dead.
It is. It's like, what the heck? Like, dude, you see a little bit of that where, this whole, sort of like these worlds colliding is going to happen. And of course it's going to happen because of this random stupid message he left on this tape, which again keeps just suspiciously getting found very easily. So we know that that Daryl is going to be like the new, like he's being hunted and all that fun stuff. And then we also have this this group of people, this community, that again they very easily run into just so I don't want to say effortlessly. And it's led by
Baloo.
um and so this is the place that I I do not like the storyline of Laurent and the idea that he's like a chosen one, that he's definitely like a
Well,
genius
neither
character.
does Daryl. So once again, the show is like, audience, you don't like this? Neither does Daryl.
Yeah,
It's a
kind of.
dumb storyline. Daryl
And
thinks it's dumb, so it's dumb. It's just
um
a weird, it's like setting us up to be antagonistic, or I don't know, maybe I'm putting too much. But yeah,
well,
I'm kind of there too. I'm like, what has this kid done to deserve this status?
right.
Nothing.
And then they have him do these like little mysterious things like, oh, he knows that this woman needs comfort. Well, he could just be an incredibly empathetic kid, and that's just what he does. But they're trying to make it like, oh, he does have this, and Daryl's so wrong for like doubting this thing about him. And it's like, and then they have him being kind of like, doing normal kid things too, which I wish they would do a little bit more of instead of making him this like sage. But anyway, um, I do like the idea, and we certainly find out a little bit more about Isabel's past and certain things that are made clear at least, which is she was definitely part of a drug dealing something or other, um, and like going back to the old department and doing the callback to the kid. I thought that was kind of cool.
That was dumb, HA, and I'll tell you why. Was it surprising that we see Amy? No, because you show a kid
Knew
in
we were going to
episode
see
2
her.
and she comes back as a zombie in episode 3. But this kid turned into a zombie at least 10 years ago. There
Oh,
is
yeah,
not going to be like,
for sure.
how many zombies have we seen who are completely desiccated now? This kid looks like she just turned 3 days ago, maybe, except for the fact that her feet are tangled up in vines and her clothing is still completely intact.
She's
She's been
falling off.
outside.
She's
She's been
falling
in
off.
the outdoors for
All
a
right. Okay.
decade plus. So there's no way. I'm just like, what are you doing?
Well, okay. I'm more like, okay, putting her in the place I liked. I liked that it was like a callback and we knew they were going to do that. The execution of it wasn't great, but um I liked seeing sort of the sort of the way that the apartment building was so overgrown and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, you're right. They could have definitely done a better job at I don't know
Just
what she would be, like just sort of like a ragged bit of bones, maybe
yeah,
just
like an arm flailing around on the floor. That's all that's left.
um
But yeah, having her be completely recognizable was ridiculous to me. And people might think that's a nitpick or a quibble about like, oh, but time has passed. But yeah, it has. And even the zombies break down over time. And the show has shown us that over and over again. So all I'm doing is following the logic of this franchise. And if they can't follow their own logic, then again, I'm like, what are the showrunners and the people who are like universe guiding? What's that dude's name? I want to say his name is Tribble, but that's not his name. The guy who's the overlord of the franchise used to be the showrunner for Walking Dead.
are you talking about Scott Gimple?
Gimple, not Tribble. Yeah, Scott Gimple. This is his
Oh,
job, right? He's there to be the continuity guy. Oh, that's what I thought. But maybe he's there to like help people write or just get a fat check because he's like an executive producer. Uh,
yeah, I mean, if I think she's even still wearing the same clothes, which we know
she's
just
wearing exactly the same overalls. So she
um,
died that day, probably. That Isabel drove out of town. But this show, I think, is having a bit of a challenge with the amount of time that has passed and the fact that they wanted to go back and do flashbacks with the same actors. Like, I mean, Daryl, if you did a flashback to season one of The Walking Dead and showed him in this episode, and there's one scene where he's like bottom lit by a green light, dude, he's looking Norman Reedus has aged. That this happens. If
yep.
you showed me two pictures from 2010 and now, yes, I would look very different too. But then you've got Isabel who looks exactly the same. So does Quinn, and so does Amy, even though she's been dead the whole time. So I do have a problem with that. That said, all of that negativity aside for the moment, that was my main beef with this series of this apartment scene. I liked everything else. I thought the walkers coming out of the windows, we just saw that in Dead City, but it was still a cool threat in this scene.
Of the archaeology of the apartment just being like this kept thing and going in. I do think it would have been a lot dirtier.
It
Um,
was pretty dirty. There was tags on her walls. I did not go back and see if that was exactly the same apartment that it must have been.
yeah, but I
But then
liked
the way that they dealt with the Brulon also in the courtyard, I thought was pretty cool.
that was fun. And then I do like that, finally we get a little bit more about Quinn. Um, and I like the fact that she is getting a photo for Laurent, who has never seen his mother, but it's never come up that she's his aunt, which is weird. So
Now it's like implied.
it is, but like, wouldn't he know? I don't know. Like it's just sort of strange that this is something she wouldn't
Maybe he does know.
maybe. Um, so anyway, they go and they're doing all this stuff to trade. Oh, and I forgot about one key part is that when they meet up with this whole group of people, they don't have a radio, but they do have like carrier pigeons or messenger
Yeah.
pigeons.
And you know who the pigeon master is?
Yes.
Freaking French master character actor Dominic Pinon.
And he is
Uh,
awesome. And he is
yeah.
in Amelie, and he's in all of
He's
those.
in all the Jean-Pierre Jeunet films. I think every single one, City of Lost Children, etc. Go on. Alien 4. Yeah.
He's in everything.
He's in everything and he's incredible.
And it's very funny because they have he's named his pigeon Zizou, which is a French footballer that everybody's very fond of. But I just love that he was in there. I got so excited to see him, but I love Daryl's reaction. He's like, "You got pigeons?" like that's what you're doing.
He's dismissive and kind of nasty this whole episode is what I'm getting at.
It's like, well, that's what we have. And honestly, that's like kind of more secure than some other things. And, this is just him being very cranky in this entire episode. But I did love to see Dominique Pignon in this. I thought he was just so exciting. I hope we see more, but I suspect not.
That might have been it. That might have been it. I mean, their camp is like overrun by the end of not by zombies, but by Guerrier. So who knows if he even survived? There were bodies on the ground by the end of the episode. He
And
wasn't
we
visible amongst them, but
and so they, this is the whole thing, and Isabel says she'll help Daryl get, what he needs, and that's how they all end up to get the trade from her apartment building, and that's how they end up in the catacombs with this sort of double super secret underground a group of people who really like entertainment, and there's like
drag
the
shows.
and all of this stuff. And of course Quinn makes his appearance, and I will say one of the things I do like about what they're doing is that they're so Daryl, like the idea of things from his perspective, like they're not translating things, like he feels very much like in the dark. However, I do like how he sort of can read a room still, and he knows that the guy that they're dealing with is not the guy in charge. And
He
so
does this a couple times during these scenes because he does the same thing basically when Quinn and Isabel start to negotiate. But yeah, the first time he's doing it without understanding anything anybody's saying. He's just seeing the guy pawing at the bag of drugs and jewelry before they've even heard anything about a bateau or a boat. Like obviously he's not following the conversation at all. I do like all of these scenes where he's in the dark, and when they first meet Falou, it's the same thing. But what happens there is Isabel says this guy doesn't speak any French, only English, and so Falou just switches to English for the rest of the show, which I do think is unrealistic. I feel like anything that he wants to say to Daryl, he would say in English, but when he
I think
like
he
when they're he's
else.
just talking to Laurent, he's like, "And you, young man, we've been waiting to meet you for." I'm like, "Come on, let's just speak in French. Daryl can just suck it up." It seems a little too nice to Daryl to be speaking English all the time. At least the drug dealer or whatever it is, that black market guy does not speak really any English.
Mm-mm.
And the insane guy in Angers basically doesn't speak English either. I loved that scene where he's like, "Yes, grass is green, blue, sky is blue. Where is Jeffrey? He is in the kitchen." Okay.
Funny.
That was great. But yeah, you're right. Daryl reading the room is doing good work. It's like he's still being irritable and crabby, but at this point, he's doing it like kind of to defend his own end game, but also to defend Isabel. He's kind of protective of her, and that gets them into their second argument of the episode.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. I will say that when, Quinn and Isabel meet up, it isn't, there's definitely a lot of looks exchanged between them. Last time we saw, she was leaving him, she's taking her sister. And then, she's still in the dark. Like she talks about Laurent, and then he's like, "Oh, I should have known I'd had a child." And I guess he assumes that her sister told her, but I guess, she was caught off guard by this. At first, I thought he was implying that Laurent was actually hers, but no. And this was like interesting, this stuff between them. I do like how Daryl's just like, "No, this is a bunch of BS." Like this guy is just not, this is too much. I'm not dealing with this. And like, to his credit, he's just like, "No, we're not." But it is a funny exchange between him because she's like, "I don't need your rescuing. I was negotiating." Like it is a very funny thing between the two of them. Like she's like, "I don't
Yeah.
need a hero." And
She's not really being honest with herself, though. I
no,
feel like
no,
she's just been blindsided by Quinn to
yeah,
find out that he might be Laurent's father, whether or not it's true.
yeah.
And it might not be, but it probably is because you called it, and you don't make bad calls. But yeah, she's looking like like she just got smacked in the face by a brick, and Daryl's just over on the side watching this all go down, and eventually it's like, "Nope, this guy's bad news. We're out of here." But yeah, she's like, I didn't need a hero." But then like they make up kind of very quickly, or she apologizes to him very quickly, even though he's already packing his bags. And in a way, I get why he would do that. Daryl doesn't need groups. He has been
The lone wolf all the time.
and
All
he's been so crabby that's like probably an accurate portrayal of how he would be around a group that he has really no real ties to.
Yep.
Even if Laurent is attached to him. And then when they're having this conversation, this is where Laurent has his first, to me, poorly written reaction. Most of the time they write for Laurent, they write him as this smart kid who's like telling Daryl about a De La Fontaine novel, or story. Um, and then like he and Daryl and Isabel are talking about Laurent and how he's telling her, you have to stop lying to him, tell him who his father is. He needs to be able to have the truth for himself to figure out what he's going to be, and he's not a messiah.
Right.
Laurent overhears this or parts of it and says, I hate you both. And then like goes and hides, and then the Guerriers show up and everything is chaos. But I really don't understand the reaction from him. Upon like if you listen to the conversation that Daryl and Isabel are having, there's nothing there that's like Laurent is a jerk, he's a bad kid. There's nothing to like piss him off, I feel like.
Well, I mean, and he doesn't really know all the stuff about him. So that's what was confusing to me, his reaction, because he doesn't really know this stuff, but maybe if this stuff was a surprise, I'm not sure. And
Like just even the idea that Isabel has been lying to him, but he already knows this. Like he figured this out in the last episode.
yeah, but maybe related to that stuff and not something about his mom. And, and he is feeling it because he's finally gotten to see a photo of his mom by the Eiffel Tower and he's showing it to everybody.
He has that conversation in English with the lounge singer.
She never would have because they're both
Two
friends.
French people having a conversation alone in English made me
Although
sad.
she is actually, I think she's like Russian or something like that. The actor anyway,
Oh, maybe she doesn't speak French.
but she seems to be. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, that was a little confusing to me. I again also with the new big bad Caudron and um, you know, the, the whole Guerriere like um that storyline with the convenient tape recorder.
We get to revisit that graffiti from the first episode, Pouvoir des Vivants.
Yep.
And Isabel breaks it down for Daryl about like how Genet runs the city and the people flock to her for security, and he says kind of like the church, like he's just being a jerk still.
Mhm.
But then also, yeah, we do get that scene of Caudron arriving in Paris. Well, we assume it's in Paris. At the mother house, he calls it the Maison Mère, and goes and meets with Genet to talk about how he'll never stop seeking the American Daryl Dixon because he killed his brother, which is actually not true. Maribel killed his brother. So okay, as far as motivations go, it checks out, but it's also like, well, it's not true. It's a little dissatisfying to me
Yeah.
that he actually is after the wrong guy, but he's going to do it with the passion of 1,000 burning suns.
Right.
Um,
And then, I mean, again, with the little exchange with them, we do see the pouvoir, the whole it sort of experimentation with the zombies, what they're doing. I guess they're probably weaponizing them. It's a little unclear what they're
yeah,
doing,
it
except
feels like they are, but it's like how they're doing it is very unclear. They're
yeah,
jabbing it with a cattle prod maybe until
I
it goes wild.
and so we've got an experimentation thing going on, which, I guess we aren't too shocked at. And then so they were organized in this way, but they're a different faction from Quinn's faction, and Quinn has some kind of an agreement with them, what he has agreed to, or why there is some kind of a sort of a pass for his club, and everything else is a little unclear. Um, but he clearly runs some part of this underground thing. But again, I think we'll probably find out a little bit more about what the arrangement is. But in the meantime, Daryl's presence in this community is incredibly disruptive. Laurent is like running away or whatever he's doing. But I will say, despite the fact that Daryl and Isabel are fighting, they still both are like, let's go and let's meet up in another place. They are still united despite this friction that has happened between them.
Well,
Uh,
because the Guerriers show up and there's clearly a bigger problem that they have
right.
on their doorstep.
But Laurent's they're like, make sure Laurent's safe and do all this other stuff. And then I will say, of course, Caudron is going to stay alive, but Daryl like pretty much almost strangles him to death. My question is that
They're
why the wonderful sharpshooters on the roof didn't also like somehow accidentally hit him, because their shots seem to be going wild.
yeah.
But there's
The firing line definitely would have hit Caudron too, for sure. Yeah, they start shooting at him while they're like entwined. And this is the second fight between Daryl and Caudron, And in both of them, it's felt very close. Like, you know, you remember when Daryl was fighting Beta, who was like massive?
Hey, like it's like he seems like I don't like how they're I don't know, maybe he's weak from his transatlantic journey.
Maybe
Or
he's just old.
maybe. I mean he's aged, but maybe none of the French people have aged. Maybe.
Did you not notice that scene where they're looking at the painting of the lilies in the
Yeah.
underground club, and the lighting is just shining up on Daryl's face?
Yep.
And yeah, it just he looked ancient in that
Yep.
shot.
He really did. And then, they also that's like the other thing. They're in like the damp and whatever, and those kinds of paintings don't do so well there. Like the fact that it's
Oh
still
yeah.
there. I did like the call out. I think that some like in their little encampment, that whole thing of the last, I think that's like the last judgment behind him. Maybe it's not. I have to go back and look, but like, or a copy of it, it looks like somebody did a big mural of it. Maybe it's something else, but very, very French. Sort of a hideout with the water lilies. And I mean, man, if I like water lilies and all, but Musée d'Orsay has so many amazing pieces of art that are better than that. So it's kind of funny that that's
Maybe
but
those are the
I
only
guess
ones they could get, or they were all at the Met.
they are maybe right now. But maybe it's also because they wanted to do something that was probably familiar to more American audiences, which is possible too. So anyway, uh that's the sort of I liked parts of this. I didn't think that it was quite as well thought out as other things. I guess maybe they're going to use this to set the table for the next episode, but I'm not. I mean, we've got Laurent's sort of on the run or whatever. Isabel's looking for him. Daryl's running from this group of people and has now fallen through the roof. I'm guessing he's going to fight his way out of zombies or
Well,
something.
yeah, the I didn't watch all of the coming next, but he's clearly reunited with Isabel in the next episode. So,
I
uh,
guess I'm wondering when we're going to see a little bit more. I mean, we've seen the sort of acid zombies, so they've definitely shown us that. The thing that we saw in that whole trailer in the French lab, like, at the end of the
yeah, the super strong ones.
yeah, like we haven't seen that, and I'm wondering when those are going to make an appearance. And so maybe it's soon, but like so far we haven't seen as much of that, and so I'm curious when that's going to happen. I agree with you, like the sort of general, other than the little acid zombie and how they used him to get rid of to sort of like melt through the vines, and the experimentation we saw, we haven't really seen much more. Like everything seems kind of normal Walker at this point.
Well,
So
at least there's more than there was in Dead City. So it's still considering the shift that they were looking to make. This is closer to what I was expecting it to be like.
yeah, but also Paris. I mean, Paris, the population. While it's a lot, this is the thing. It's smaller than New York, but we've seen a lot more walkers here than we were in some of the Dead City things. So, I wonder how it's going to be if there's like zones in Paris that they're trying to focus on. Maybe we'll see more in the next episode. But
Well, here's
it still seems very light on the walkers, considering that it's a city with a population, a pretty dense population. So.
yeah, that's true. I do have one potential prediction to make, which is that Quinn did not dime out Daryl. This is my prediction. Even though things went really badly in their negotiation, I think it was his girlfriend, the lounge singer, who dimed them out.
Yeah, I definitely think so because she's jealous of whatever's happening there. And she
So
clearly
he's gonna try and bail Isabel out again, even though
well, and
he's like a borderline bad guy.
I think it's clear, and this was one thing that I did like. I love these actors. I think it's a great cast.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the energy between Quinn and Isabel is perfect. I mean, he's shocked that she's become a nun, but there's definitely a I knew you back when, and I knew you, and she's uncomfortable with that. And she's also uncomfortable with Daryl knowing. I mean, we find out that it was a suicide attempt, that he, like the scars on her wrists, and that he brought her to the hospital. She's not very excited that Daryl knows this, and that's a little bit of a reaction. But he still is clearly like considering the fact that she ditched him, he still seems mildly obsessed with her, and I think that the lounge singer wants to know who they are and is jealous. So maybe I would agree with you. I think she definitely is the one who sold them out, and I also think that Quinn despite all this, I mean, he keeps looking at Laurent. He's definitely impacted by the fact that this is his kid, despite the fact that he was gonna like dump, he knew that this was his kid. Like
Yeah.
he was still gonna like just let them fend for themselves, maybe because of his relationship with Isabel. He's like, oh, it was a mistake, and now he's all like, oh, I needed to know I was a dad. It's like, how would she have told you were a dad? She thought you were dead. She ditched you, man. Like, I don't know. I thought that was kind of an incongruous thing,
That is, you're
but
right.
I do think you're right that it is motivating him, and I don't think he would have sold out anybody knowing that it could put Isabel and Laurent in danger. I don't think he cares at all about Daryl, but given his sort of like proximity to them, I don't think he would have done that.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Well, we'll continue to see how things go in Paris,
Mm-hmm.
which will always be Paris. In the next episode, it's going to be called La Dame de Fer, the Iron Lady.
Ooh,
Um, so that might be a reference to Janae. We might get to know her a little better.
yeah, and find out a little bit more about her. But anyway, I'm still enjoying it. I want to see a little bit more. And similar, like, look, similar to like this is like what we have been talking about in terms of character and what we know of characters and things like that. I agree with you that I think they're making Daryl a little bit too like ornery, and his reactions aren't sort of what I think they would actually be. So I think they either have to explain that, or like I guess maybe they're just trying to have it be this source of conflict, or this is just the way he is. But um I don't know. I hope that they're sort of going to explain something, or there's some kind of a moment where he sort of puts that behavior to rest. I like sort of back to the whole messenger pigeon thing. I kind of think Daryl would think that was like annoyed that it takes a while, but I still think he would think that was cool. Like I don't think he would be so dismissive of it.
Well,
So
yeah, he's definitely a crabbier version of himself. And like this drive to return to the US feels like he was always kind of an aimless wanderer in a way. Like he had a mission, and it was, previously it was to search every inch of the riverbank where Rick disappeared.
mm,
But yeah, like his mission right now is just to like wander the earth until he finds them in theory. So you could do that in France. I don't know, like what's the hurry?
yeah.
So yeah, it does feel a little bit odd, but it's and a little extra drama for him and Isabel to navigate. What do we think? Is she gonna stay a nun, or is she gonna be like, oh, Daryl?
I don't know. I think it's hard to determine. I mean, obviously they're trying to ship them to some extent, though so far it does not feel
It's not. There's.
it
I'm
doesn't
not
feel
feeling much of a vibe. Yeah,
no. And I'm not even feeling that from him, and
certainly not as much as with him and Lauren Ridloff.
yeah,
Um,
definitely. Yeah,
yeah,
like that was something anyway. So I guess we'll have to wait and see about that. I do think that there is something between them in a mutual respect category or something, where the sort of the revelation of her past and things like that. And I will say I did like how Daryl said to her, "Look, that stuff, everybody's got that. It's not a big deal." Like he's not judging her on that at all. What he is judging her on is the dishonesty that she continues to have, or the story she continues to tell Laurent, which he thinks are like much more damaging. And Daryl doesn't have a tolerance for dishonesty. Um, we see that in the original series. He gets very frustrated with it. He gets very like um angry about it, and he's got a right to be, because every time like somebody kind of like um sort of, I don't want to say betrays him, but betrays him in this specific way, it is just absolutely devastating to him. And the one thing I can think about is like with Carol and um you know like Connie, and the fact that that Carol's the one was responsible for Connie basically being like sort of sucked into this tomb of zombies and things like that. And Daryl and Carol eventually make up. Like they've got like a deep friendship and relationship, but he was damaged by that, and he just can't like, and when he sees this happening, and and I think also he cares about kids too, and he's seen it with the other kids that he is associated with and people trying to protect them, and he's like, you can't protect them, this is the world we're in. And this
Mhm.
also comes from his own upbringing. I mean, this is somebody who had cigarettes put out on him and was horribly abused, both him and his brother. And I think that that is why he has such a soft spot for kids, is that even though he does care about them, he also was self-reliant and resilient, and I think he sees the same thing in them, and he doesn't have a tolerance for adults who treat them otherwise. So that's going to be kind of interesting to see what happens. And I wonder if we're going to have, I'm sure we see another conversation between him and Laurent, potentially about some of these issues. So
Yeah, assuming Laurent. I mean, Laurent is almost certainly going to run away to the Eiffel Tower. That might be where he's
oh yeah,
gone
of course he
already,
is. Of
which
course he
is
is.
kind of a
He's brought it,
bummer.
how many times has he brought it up? I don't know.
Yeah, just a few hundred. And I don't know. Okay, I can't think of every instance where Daryl has reacted negatively to someone telling an untruth, but certainly the Carol and Connie was mostly because Carol was making terrible decisions, not so much that she was lying, but she was just so obsessed with Alpha that she was making terrible choices, and I think that was why he was mad at her then.
She wasn't sharing it with him. She was kind of going off and doing these things and not looping him in, and then things happened.
And
Uh,
then during the Savior War, and this I could definitely just put down to episode season 7 or whatever season it was, where him and Rick, they've just had a big shootout with Saviors. At the end of the shootout, he's like, "Yeah, put down your weapons, and you'll be fine." And the guy's like, "Oh, okay." And then Daryl shoots him. So not, I mean, again, like the writing was not consistent in those middle seasons either, but he's definitely had as a character his own forays into.
and then he had this whole tryst with his lady friend, and it turns out she's part of this whole crazy faction, and he's like, okay, like that's not gonna fly. You know what I
He
mean?
gave her so many chances,
He
though.
did.
HA, I don't
So
like just being dishonest or like I don't know that that's necessarily the thing that sets him off. But I think he is definitely like protective of children. Obviously, like you said, I think that's definitely in there. And I think, as a guy who has abandoned his adoptive daughter Judith to come on this fool's errand, it's a little rich of him to be like, be a better parent to Isabel. Like, at least she's with Laurent and she hasn't left him alone, which Daryl has done repeatedly to RJ and Judith, who have also been abandoned in turn by both of their parents. Although Lori didn't necessarily abandon Judith so much as get eaten uh, near her after her being delivered by her brother Carl. Either way, don't need to go all the way back to season 3, but I did. Dishonesty, it's bad, kids. Don't do it, or Daryl might get mad at you. Also, he's probably not a good babysitter.
probably not. I'm trying to remember because there was also the whole thing between him and Rick about like,
He was driving Rick away from the meeting that he was supposed to be going to, right? Or that he basically was one of the people, along with Maggie, who were directly responsible for Rick's quote unquote death, which is why he was so obsessed with finding his body on the river or finding him on the river. He betrayed him, and they had that fight in the hole. Was
yeah.
that the thing you were thinking of?
Yeah, that's the thing I was thinking of. So yeah. Anyway, more to come, and I'm curious to see what happens. I'm sure we'll see some Eiffel Tower action here.
Oh yeah, almost
Um,
100% guarantee some Eiffel Tower action, and maybe the top will fall off even more. Was it kind of like hanging by a thread?
yeah, that's what it kind of looked like. That like the top of it was sort of bent down, which hey, that's kind of a to at least make it different looking. I think that was, or that time had passed. I think that was probably a good idea.
So we'll
So,
see. We'll see about that.
but
Let's wrap. Oh,
now they
go
can
ahead.
only, because they can probably film down at the bottom, and now they can just like do that without showing the full. I don't
They're
know.
not even going to film at the. They're not even filming in Paris. I'll bet you.
So, well, no, they're in Paris, but I don't know that how you get that kind of permit. Like that's got to be hard. That
Oh, it
area.
did take place in Paris. Mother of pearl.
There you go.
Look at that.
There you go. Anyway, But more to come next time. Let's see what happens, and maybe we'll get a little bit more satisfied with how the story is going.
Yeah, this had good moments. It just had some things, Amy specifically, that I didn't like, and some of Daryl's irascibility are hitting me in the wrong way. But it's still a solid show. It's just that now we're halfway through this first season, and so I feel like it needs to we'll pull back some of that energy from episode 2, which was super good. Kind of want more nuns. I don't
I
know.
want more walkers in the subway train kind of action.
Yeah, we need some more of that.
Yeah.
But let's wait and see. The Lady of Iron is coming up next, and we'll be back to talk about that with you. And you can let us know how you're feeling about Norman Reedus's stoic performance or Laurent's strange outbursts by emailing us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And you can listen back on any of our episodes that are online at reanimated.podbean.com. And I hope you do.
I do too. And until next time, I think salut or ciao or whatever we were gonna say.
Toodaloo.
Bye.